Pawo and welcome to Hello from Bhutan. I am Namgizam and I think most of you, if you're watching, you've already recognized the person who I have on the podcast with me today. And if you aren't watching and you're listening, I have on the podcast back again Pawo Choyning Dorji, who actually needs no introduction to Bhutanese, and also to a lot of the international audience because he's an Academy Award nominee and the recipient of the very highly cherished and very prestigious Druk Thukse medal here in Bhutan, which is the highest civilian honor. So thanks for being back on the show. I don't think I've had like this long an introduction for you and all of the times I've interviewed you, and I'm just like, I might forget everything that you're decorated with.
Thank you so much, Namgizam. I'm really happy to be back and to be back with you.
I think this might be the first time that I'm actually interviewing you on video from all the years that I've known you.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah? Like it's always been audio,
yeah.
Right? And I think I've known you, like I was saying, Pawo, when I want to do this podcast, I don't want to do this like so officially as, oh my God, like Pawo, who's been to the Oscars. No, but I want to actually take you back to like, when you first, not really started your journey, but when I first interviewed you, like, about 10 years ago, I think? Mm-hmm. Like you're a photographer, traveler, wanted to be an aspiring writer, and you had like no idea that you were really going to become like this film director writing scripts, right?
It has been an incredible journey. I think you're right. One of the first interviews I did was with you in the Folk Heritage. And we were talking about my photography project along the Silk Roads.
Yeah.
And just as that I was starting to work on the English version, which you helped with, I got into filmmaking.
Which you harassed me for.
Yes, I did.
No, but I'm hoping that that book actually sees the light of day when you have time to finish it, because it's interesting.
You and many others.
I remember you telling me after, because I was interviewing you for AFP, right? And I was like, and this is when you'd been nominated for Lunana, and then you were like, I don't know how I'll be if you happen to win the award. It's like, what after that? Quite fearful too, right?
Yeah.
And then you come back and then you produce and direct another movie, A Monk and the Gun, which a lot of people have said has outdone your first film, right? You wanted to do that. You had that ambition.
I wouldn't say I had that ambition. It's interesting because when I first got Oscar nominated, the first person who called me was Nonsakensi Rinpoche. And he congratulated me, and I said, Rinpoche, I'm so scared. And he said, why? And I said, it's my first film, and I'm now Oscar nominated, and the only thing left for me to do is fall down, because everyone strives for an Oscar nomination their entire career, and for me to achieve it with my first film, now I have nowhere else but to fall down. But I mean, and then when I made The Monk and the Gun, it's not like I was Oscar nominated and I set out saying, okay, I'm going to make a film that's going to take me back to the Oscars and that I'm going to win it this time. I didn't have that aspiration. It's interesting because I made Lunana and I already started pre-production for this film. And then the pre-production had to be halted because I got Oscar nominated. So the whole campaign took me away from this film. So no, I didn't make this film as, with the aspiration that it'll top Lunana. It just happened to be there. And of course, Namgizam, when you come after an Oscar nomination, there's incredible expectation. Wherever I go, not just in Bhutan, even in America and in Taiwan where I live, when they hear that you're making a second film, everyone has so much expectation, and that expectation can be a big burden. And I think when I was making The Monk and the Gun, that was something that was a big obstacle for me, that it would actually it could have, if I wasn't too careful, it might disrupt my creative process. Because the way I work is, I keep things very simple. I keep things very grounded. My stories are very human stories, very simple. But then suddenly, when you keep hearing, this is the
Academy Award nominee Pawo's movie.
It's the second coming after Lunana, and then you have to block it out, because sometimes then that interferes with the creative process.
When you talk about the creative process, even for your first film, your script had a lot of revisions, right?
Yeah.
It had changed from its original form.
Yes.
Did that happen with The Monk and the Gun as well?
Yes. I think filmmaking in Bhutan right now, it's still in its infancy stages, and we are very limited, not only in terms of resources, but also individuals, crew-wise as well. I mean, when we made Hema Hema, we had a lot of foreign crew members. When we made Lunana, we still had to rely, on Americans coming in for sound and all that. And I can see that there's a progression that we're making, but also with another big challenge is cast. Yes, we do have a local film industry, but if you really look at it, we don't have professionally trained actors. So it's very difficult, because when you write scripts, when you write these characters and storylines, at the back of my head, I'm always thinking, will I find actors who can play out these roles? I think with Lunana, I was very fortunate to find someone like Pemzam, who was able to, really bring that character to life. Originally, it was a little girl called Wangmo. And I remember when I shared the script with my DOP, Jigme Tenzing, he said, forget about finding a girl like that in Lunana, you won't find a girl like that in the whole of Bhutan. But we did find Pemzam. And, I'm someone, when I feel like we have certain limitations in the way we work, I try to use those limitations as an asset. So, okay, we don't have professionally trained actors. Then what do? Well, let's cast according to the character. And then what I do is I spend time working with these characters and then bringing out their characteristics, their storylines, and then put them into the final script. I think a very good example is the Lama in The Monk and the Gun. He was casted literally 5 days before we started shooting.
Oh, is he a real Lama?
He's a real Lama.
I wanted to ask.
So when I went to Bumthang, originally I had casted Lama Tseten, who's a close friend of mine who lives in Tamjing in Bumthang. I had casted him as the Lama, but he was very reluctant to do it. And I think if he did it, the Lama character would be very different. Lama Tseten is very Yoda-like. Very cheerful, very jovial.
Pleasant looking.
Yeah. But when I was in Ura and I wanted permission to shoot where the Chorten is, I went to seek out permission, and they said the landowner is this person, and I went to his house and he turned out to be a Lam. And then he sat there in the corner of his room with his smoky eyes and deep voice and his beard, and I was like, whoa, that's a very powerful character. And of course I asked him if he would be willing to do it. And he said he was about to go to his cave to do a kunsam, and I convinced him to stay back. And then having him on board, then I was able to adapt the script to make the Lama character a little bit more, you could say, suspenseful.
Even ominous,
Yes.
Yeah,
because like the close up of him and his eyes are very smoky. There's something about him. And you could say that then the storyline and the script took a little bit more of the Lama figure, became more mysterious, more fearful almost.
Yes.
So that worked for the benefit of it. Also another character, I think that, this non-professional approach to casting and writing that really benefited this project is Tandin Pubs. Tandin Pubs actually came on board as my assistant, director's assistant. And originally what I wanted to do was I wanted the election officer, to be a Lhotsampa, because I really wanted the film to capture every aspect of Bhutanese society. So I thought, let's have representations, And when I was auditioning for Yangden, I had asked Pema Zangshi to come, and she was auditioning. And I remember sitting in this audition room, it was me and Zangshi. And then Pubs was there beside me, and I said, okay, there's no one here. Why don't you just read out the lines for the other officer? And then the two of them did that. And by the end of it, I looked at Pubs and I was like, hey, you're not bad. You should play this role. And then he was really happy to do it. And I think it's amazing. He was great. I adapted the script so it would be more him. I think he has that kind of comedic element that comes through, and that brings life to the character. I know that for many people he was one of their favorite characters in the movie, and many commented that he is the Ugin giant of this movie. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true, I think. No, but I think all of your characters really strong in A Monk and the Gun, as they were in Lunana, first-time actors, and I think you managed to pick them out. I was just saying how, like other directors elsewhere in the world do not have to encounter the challenge of like casting.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yes,
this is like such a unique challenge.
Yes.
But then I think you've haven't done too badly.
Well, I think I have to give credit where it's due. Large part also is to Stephanie, who is
Your wife.
my wife,
Yes.
my creative partner. Many times I think you need to have a creative partner who will tell you what you need to hear and not what they think you would like to hear. So with Steph, she's that, that voice for me. Casting wise, she always gives me good advice, and then after we have casted, she both for Lunana and The Monk and the Gun, she organized a 10-day workshop for people to get to kind of like break down their barriers, because she's an actress herself. So because when they come, people who have not acted before, and suddenly when they're on set with like big cameras in front of them, you start getting all you have second thoughts. So what am I doing here? So Steph does a good job in preparing them to come on set so I can work with them.
It's been really visible, especially Choyning, M Studio, who I've known for a very long time. So we filmed with him recently, and this was more like he had to do he had to be a cooking host, like a chef in the kitchen. And I was like, my God, Choyning, I've known you. I can really see that Pawo's film has made a huge impact on how you present and how you act, like so confident and very, very professional. I think it actually shows. The Monk and the Gun, everybody's like, there's this, so my cousin Maya, she was showing me this review on IMDb because, by the way, we're going to talk about how you need to support this film as a Bhutanese. But before that, on IMDb, there was a review saying, the film is actually about a monk and the gun. And I was thinking about all of these movies that I watch where, you have this name and it's metaphorical, or, it's not very literal. And then here it's like literal, right?
Yes,
so how did the gun happen, this juxtaposition?
Well, during the pandemic, I was stuck in Bumthang, and because I had nothing better to do, I said, let's build Pemalingpa's birth stupa. And me, a couple of friends, and the monks of Tamjing Monastery, we built the chorten there. And while building the chorten, we had to deal with everything. So as we laid the foundation, the lamas came on, and then they laid out all these weapons. Of course, we didn't have real guns. So we had little plastic guns and plastic swords, and we laid that down, and then we buried them. And I was so intrigued by that. I thought that was so amazing. So I asked them, what's the symbolism of that? And the Lama told me exactly what I put in the script. That, since guns, weapons represent aggression, hatred, suffering, they are put on the bottommost part of the chorten. The foundation is laid over it. So when the chorten is built, the mind of the chorten representing the enlightened mind is built over that. So wisdom and compassion and the enlightened mind crushes hatred, suffering, conflict. I thought that was so beautiful. And I thought that was something that if we were able to capture it on film, it could be something that could share Bhutan with the rest of the world. And that's one of my main motivations to make films in Bhutan, is to share Bhutanese culture, Bhutanese traditions with the rest of the world.
And that's where your role, I was thinking when I was watching The Monk and the Gun, and I watched Lunana as well, I was thinking, Pawo's almost like a historian, like you're archiving important moments in Bhutanese history, and in a creative way that is palatable to a mass audience, it's not like a niche audience, so it's like, it's for various age groups, and the reactions also are different, right? I was thinking, this could really, I never knew about how, you put guns and everything. Like, I learned that from your film, right? And I also thought, wow, this is very powerful, right? I think even as a Bhutanese, like, educating people and generations like my cousin Maya, who is the assistant director for this podcast, my assistant for this podcast, like she doesn't know a lot of these things too, right? But also, I think elements in the movie, I thought you had some really strong moments in your film, like that really evoked very emotional responses in Bhutanese in our generation and older, right? Who've lived through the transitional period, as opposed to the younger Bhutanese who come after and they enjoy that comedy, right? but that comedy isn't just slapstick comedy. Like that comedy is loaded also, you know, because there's so much more meaning behind that. I think that reaction, like I was sitting in the audience and I was like, oh my God, am I the only one feeling emotional? And I look around and like other people who are like wiping tears. I mean, I didn't have to wipe tears out of my, that came out of my eyes, but everybody else was tearful, right? So did you think that it would evoke this kind of a response? I mean, you did tell me like before we started filming that it did elicit that kind of a response in some of the international audience.
Yes. You know, first of all, going back to archiving Bhutanese stories, I think that's very important. I remember when I first decided to become a filmmaker, my teacher, Zongsa Khensi Rinpoche, I remember two of us were sitting outside his house in Pawo, and you know, it was a very intimate, personal moment, just him and me. And he told me, he was like, Pawo, filmmakers have a very important responsibility. And he said, we are the scribes of our time. It is through our stories, through our films, we capture what it means to be Bhutanese. Our hopes, our dreams, our values have to be captured in the stories we tell, so that future generations of Bhutanese can be like, oh, this is how our time was. So I take that responsibility very seriously. I've tried to do that with Lunana Yak in the classroom. I tried to capture, an individual who represents the Bhutanese youth and his wish to find where he belongs. At that time, in 2018, people that wish to go to Australia was there, and that's why that character wants to go to Australia. And now I feel it's become a lot more, you know. And now coming to the response from the audience, you know, to be really frank, when I made Lunana, when I finished writing the script, right at that moment, I knew what I was giving the audience and what I would get back. I was very confident. I knew that, yes, it was a simple story, but I knew a lot of people would find it emotional. You know, there might be a few tears here and there. I expected that. So even when the film premiered in London, I remember standing behind the cinema hall watching, and I was thinking, yeah, you know, it's okay. You know, with The Monk and the Gun, because you know I never went to film school, so my films are how I'm trying to become a better filmmaker. One of the main motivations for The Monk and the Gun was, how can I build on what I did with Lunana? Okay, everyone said Lunana is too simple. I was like, okay, fine, let's try something else. Lunana has only one character. Okay, let's make a whole multiple. There's about 9 characters, each with their own lives, each intersecting. And then I was trying for it to be a drama. I was trying for it to be a little bit, you could say, thriller type, a little comedy type. So at the end, when the film actually premiered at Telluride Film Festival, I was so, you know, I don't get nervous usually, but I was so nervous because I was wondering, have I tried to do too much here, you know? What if I tried too much and it all falls apart? So it was funny because we had our world premiere at the Ellis Park Theatre, and it was out in an outdoor park, 550 people, and every time certain scenes came up, I would like quickly walk away, like go to a nearby tree and kind of distract myself and see it and come back. So I don't know, I didn't know what the audience response would be. But as you said, it's interesting because there's so many things going on, there's so many different elements that, you know, some people are laughing, some people are crying, which I find very sweet. You know, even US audiences, you know, certain scenes, they got very emotional. In Bhutan, people are finding scenes when we look back at how Bhutan transitioned, how His Majesty the Fourth King gave us democracy, gifted us democracy, all that. People do get emotional to it. But I think that's the beauty of art, because this film has so many different layers, so many different storylines, that each audience in different regions of the world are finding certain things that they connect with. For example, when we screened the film here in Bhutan, and I was watching yesterday in the audience, I can tell that most of the regular Bhutanese audience, they have no idea what the Second Amendment of the US Constitution is. And the reason I put it the way it is because I was thinking, how would you interpret what the Second Amendment of the US Constitution is to a monk?
Conjure.
Yeah, so that's how I put it. But then I know that for the Bhutanese audience, they'll be like, But for the US audience, that's one of their favorite scenes because they relate to that.
Right.
And as I said, that's the beauty of art. We can take something, package it in a way that it becomes relatable for every audience.
The universal emotions and feelings. I think you've done a great job with that. I should have mentioned this at the start. I forgot. Like, The Monk and the Gun is Bhutan's official submission to the Oscars. So this is why we're talking about The Monk and the Gun. You were saying you went back yesterday, which is like a day after the premiere, right? So what kind of audience was there? Did you see? Like,
it was very interesting. Even with Lunana, when Lunana screened in Bhutan, many people came up to me and said, this is the very first time they're going to the cinema to watch a film. So I'm very encouraged to know that my films are bringing people into the Bhutanese cinemas usually, which they wouldn't.
It's a very different audience.
It's a very different audience. Yesterday I went. There were lams, there were tukus, there were some tukus that I recognized and we spoke as well. There were tourists. Interestingly, yesterday I got calls from travel agencies and even Choyning Hotel, and they wanted to know if our film had English subtitles. So I'm very happy to know that Bhutanese cinema can also be a platform that can give back to the tourists, that tourists have another option.
Right.
I also saw school children. Interestingly, I saw some government officials all the way from Pawo, and they told me that, we bunked office to come and watch the film.
You're going to put them in trouble.
So no names, but I tried to get an evening slot, but the cinema was so full that I couldn't find. This is the only time I could find. But it's bringing in a wide range of audiences, and I think that's a celebration of cinema.
The Monk and the Gun is actually showing at Lugar Theatre till the end of the month. 4 p.m., right?
4
The screening is at 4 p.m., which I think for parents like me is such a great time to go and watch a movie. Otherwise, it's too late. So, what do they call it? Do they call it like a matinee? Is it a matinee show?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so go get the tickets. You're not going to regret buying the tickets and watching this movie because later, when you see it at... we're hoping that it gets nominated again. If you see that, you'll be like, oh my God, I missed the chance to see it, and you don't want to watch pirated versions of it. You watched Lunana Yak in the Classroom, which is ethically wrong, so please don't do that. But I just want to congratulate you, Pawo. I think having seen you grow as a friend and as a professional, like from all of these years that I've known you, I think I'm actually I'm very proud of you, And I don't think you'd expect me to say this on record because I'm always very angry with you. But I really am very proud of how far you've come. And I thought, wow, I didn't think this guy would be able to tell. Your photographs are beautiful, right? And the things you would write, and especially when you talk about Xuanzang, I know that you have that lyricism in you, that romanticism in you. But to see this translate so beautifully onto screen, I think it's quite remarkable. It's a remarkable achievement, and I'm sure you must be proud of yourself, even though you have these moments of doubt, right? Like, oh wow, I can't believe I managed to pull this off, right? I'm hoping that many more international film festivals to go to. I'm sure the films are appearing at many more film festivals.
The Monk and the Gun, I'm happy to say that if you compare with Lunana, it has been received much better by not only just the film critics, but the film festivals, film distributors. So it's been a very, very busy month. We have had film festivals in the US, in Canada, in Europe, in Asia. And now the next stop for the film is Rome Film Festival, where it's in competition. Then it goes to Bombay, where they started a new competition for the South Asian films. So every year they select the best South Asian films to compete. And I'm very proud to say that this year we are representing Bhutan there. And then after that, the film travels to the US to make stops as the campaign builds up. For the announcement of the Oscar shortlist, which is in December. So I'm looking forward to it. It's very busy, but as you were saying, it's been an amazing journey, and I think you as a dear friend, you have witnessed this. But for me, it's I always tell people, I never wanted to become a filmmaker. I never thought I would become a filmmaker. Forget about that, an Oscar-nominated filmmaker. But for me, I always tell people it's because of the love of storytelling. You know me, I was always in love with storytelling. And you know, I always tell people that in Bhutanese culture, we don't even have a word for storytelling. We were just discussing this earlier.
I was like, what do you mean you don't have a word for storytelling?
Because, you know, I'm Kurtep, I'm Bumtap, I'm a little Shachop as well. But in all of our dialects, you know, Tamtur Shikcho, Rungma Te Shige, it's always about untying a knot. And even in Zongkha, Sunchi Tan, the verb to tan is to release, no? So I think that shows how important storytelling is in Bhutanese culture. I myself, I remember growing up in my grandfather's house. You know, at that time we didn't even have gas stoves, so we would have these big wooden logs in the stove, in the tup, and you know, I would every day, you know, I was so keen to grow up. Every day I would go measure my height on the mud wall, you know, hoping that I'd grow even an inch taller, and then you know, just stories being told over that, you know, and that's how I grew up, and for me. Storytelling was always such an important part of my life, and that's what drew me into photography. When we first met, that's what I was doing. I was journeying across the Silk Roads into Afghanistan, Pakistan, because I wanted to tell stories through images, pictures, and of course, when you have that passion, when you have that, you know, that love for something like that, you just want to evolve, right? And then you could say somehow writing got involved, and then eventually I came to realize that one of the most powerful tools of telling stories is moving pictures. And that's, I think you could say, filmmaking is kind of like the evolution of my love of photography and writing coming together, you know. So yeah.
I also remember, I think in the first interview, I suddenly remembered that you said this, where, you know, it's all about causes and conditions, right? Like you were saying, it was never intentional for you to become a filmmaker, but then the right causes and conditions existed for you to be at the right place at the right time, doing the right thing.
Yes.
I want to talk about the campaign, okay? So we had this conversation when Lunana was in the running to win an Oscar, but it never really got published anywhere. So I want to give Pawo a chance to talk about what this campaign is and why is Pawo at the premiere giving us this little, you know, posters of Monkey the Gun, and I'm DB Princess is saying, please support the film. Like, yes,
well, you know,
explain.
Unfortunately, the Oscar campaign is very, you know, it's very, very competitive. I mean, it's not unfortunate, but it has to be competitive. But then the thing is, if you look at the history, you know, of the Academy, usually films that tend to do well are usually from wealthier countries. You know, that's why it's always Scandinavia, France, Italy, and from Asia, if you look at the history, it's always Japan or Korea. And that's because, you know, funds are needed. When we were first shortlisted, when Lunana was first shortlisted, the first question they asked was, oh, how much is the Bhutan government funding this campaign? And I said none. And I said, this is the reason why poorer countries don't do well, because it's very competitive. And not only that, you're up against big production companies, big distributors.
Big PR companies.
But I think with Lunana Yak in the classroom, we were very, very fortunate because the cause and conditions all aligned for us to get nominated, which was very historic, which was an amazing journey. And you know, along the way, I met amazing individuals who have again come together for the campaign of The Monk and the Gun. And I feel I'm much more experienced, much more better equipped to deal with something like that now. But going forward still, you know, we're up against some of the best films in the world, you know, and some of the most well-funded Oscar campaigns, you could say.
I can already hear you being very careful about how you feel about Monk and the Gun's journey.
But
that trepidation.
But you know, I mean, and that's why I was telling the audience in the premiere. I said a way we can support the film since we are a poor country, is to try and create a buzz for it.
Right.
You know? And one way is to go on IMDb and give us a rating,
right.
so that the film can be trending. People can hear about it, people can see about it, and interviews like this, your podcast, it all helps, because also Namgizam, what you have to understand is
I find it so weird when you full name me, but I can never get used to it. But Namgizam, Rinpoche, like Namgizam more.
Yeah, also I think poorer countries, even though the film might be doing well, there might not be interest also even from the press,
Right.
Press does a lot as well. In Bhutan, unfortunately, films don't really get the press I would say it deserves, because actually the success of a film from Bhutan on the international level does so much for the country, as it showed with Lunana. And I think one way Bhutan can help, if we can't fund the campaign, is
provide visibility.
Provide visibility.
Right.
And we don't have that much. There's only a handful, two journalists in Bhutan who are interested in the monk and the gun and its journey. So anything helps.
Okay, I will keep that in mind. I think the younger lot too. I mean, if you can get that across on various platforms, support is really, really important. The competition is really intense and fierce once you reach that platform. And I do want to share, I think this is, I do know that it is a fact. It literally is a love letter to Bumthang, the monk and the gun, right? And Pema Lingpa, even though it is not mentioned, this has been like, I think your whole life's goal, right? To be able to, maybe a little bit on that before we wrap up.
I'm a Bumthang, so Bumthang is home to me. And of course, Bumthang is the land of Pema Lingpa, which I feel is a cultural, spiritual icon of Bhutan that we don't give so much importance to. And Bumthang is synonymous with Pema Lingpa. And for me, what I've realized is when I make a film somewhere, I give so much of myself to that project and to that location. For example, when I made Lunana, I think I left a large part of my heart in Lunana, and I'm still very associated with that place. I worked really hard in trying to get Pemzam out of Lunana, and now I'm happy to say that she is studying in the Royal Academy through her own merit. I'm also, involved with the locals up there to try and bring them solar batteries. So it's like a personal connection that we built. And with Bumthang, yes, I had that already with Pema Lingpa, but I wanted to make this film so that I can give even more to this beautiful part of Bhutan. When we did make The Monk and the Gun in Ura, it was such a special bond that we made with the village. The whole village was invested in the film. Every home in the village had become a homestay. When we left, it was amazing because all the village mothers came out crying. And I'm happy that through The Monk and the Gun, the world can see Bumthang. And I hope that visual connection might plant the seed of Pema Lingpa. And that they have that cause and condition then, which may bloom in another lifetime.
Thank you so much, Pawo. And I think I speak for a lot of Bhutanese people when I say thanks for daring to dream and inspiring Bhutanese to dream. And I think inspiring the next generation of filmmakers, writers. It's been really wonderful talking about filmmaking with you, but also I think all of your endeavors is always about giving back, right? I think both of the films. Tashidele, I think it's wonderful. All of the merit that you're gaining from this exercise. Can't wait to see what you're doing next. Thank you so much to everybody who watched this, and thank you to everybody who's listening to Hello from Bhutan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.